So, what do we need to do in order to figure out what level of awareness our ex has to determine whether or not it's going to be healthy to invite them back into our lives? What we need to really make sure on is we're not just testing people randomly. We need to ground these conversations in recognizing what our needs and boundaries are. Then, if someone's behavior crosses that line, you bring it out into the open in a way that lets you see how much awareness they actually have. And in order for you to do this, there's 5 steps in the process. The first and very important is getting clear on what your needs and what your boundaries are. So before you even enter into a conversation, and quite frankly, before you even enter into a dating situation with someone new, ask yourself, what do you need to feel safe and secure? And also, what are you not willing to compromise on? Because remember, there is a distinct difference between wants and needs in relationships. Needs are the fundamental non-negotiable essentials that have to be present or it's a no-go for you. And then wants are sort of the bells and whistles. Like, yeah, ideally, if they had this too, that would be great. But if they don't, that's fine. So for example, one of the needs that you may identify for yourself is I need honesty and clear, open communication in order to build or rebuild trust. So if they're not honest and they are not open in their communication, no go. Now, number 2, if we're dealing with an ex who has swum back around, is being able to name the unhealthy behavior. So describing what actually happened without judgment or loaded language. So for example, it seemed really consistent the last few weeks when we were talking, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, you just stopped replying to any of my text messages and you wouldn't answer the phone. And you did this and you didn't let me know at all what was going on. So then step 3 is naming the impact of that behavior. So what you're doing here is explaining how the behavior affected you. This makes it personal and grounds it in the reality of the situation. So building on the previous step, when you disappeared for a few days without letting me know, I felt really anxious and I was starting to question whether or not I could trust that you're actually going to be there for me. Now, step 4 is stating your boundary and asking for clarification as to what went on and why. So you can either clarify your boundary and or ask for their perspective on the behavior. This is where you can start to probe into their level of awareness. So a boundary example is I can't be in a relationship with someone who just all of a sudden goes silent on me. That just does not feel emotionally safe for me, and I'm not about that. Now, an example of an awareness probe can be something like, well, what was going on for you that made you pull away like that without letting me know what was going on? And then step 5 is listening to what they say. This is what gives you an indication of their awareness level. Ground 0 is they deny or minimize. That's just how I am. Deal with it. Level 1, which is also a no-go, they see the behavior, but nothing deeper than that. Yeah, I know I shut down sometimes. Level 2, they are able to connect the behavior to a cause or a trigger. I know I just shut down because asking for space makes me feel a bit overwhelmed, so I find it easier to just back out of the situation for a little bit until I can calm myself down. Level 3, which remember is the potential green light, this is where they're actively working on their behavior. I know that historically I shut down when I get overwhelmed, but I'm actively working on trying to learn how to regulate myself and not shut down and withdraw when I feel triggered, and I'm just trying to do better. And is there a way that we can sort of have a conversation about how I can try and stay calm and you can still feel like you're being seen? And even though this might sound quite scripted and clunky, when we are learning to be present and regulated, this is how we start it. It's never going to be this really linguistically beautiful, unclunky process. That's literally just what happens when we're learning to show up as better, healthier individuals. So that's the 5-step process that you can work through to try and figure out the level of awareness that your ex-partner has if they've swum back around, especially if it is someone who has engaged in quite hurtful, harmful behaviors, withdrawn themselves from the situation and left you feeling quite dysregulated, unseen, unheard, and unvalidated. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have your back, no one else will. And self-abandoning to try and keep someone in your life is a surefire way to misery.